Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be showcasing and demoing the air resistance system I made for the Unity 3D engine. So, with the default rigid body setup, as you can see I have nothing special here. We have two spheres. One is bigger than the other. Now, according to how the world works in reality, there is air resistance on Earth, and the bigger sphere should fall slower than the smaller sphere. But let's hit play and see what happens. As you can see, the two spheres hit the ground at the same time. Now, my air resistance system fixes this. So your first step is to import it. So we're going to go here. And if you haven't downloaded it, you can download this off of itch.io. The link will be in the description. So you just drag it into your assets folder, hit import, and you're good to go. Everything's in. Now, setup isn't quite done yet. You're going to want to grab your spheres, or whatever rigid bodies you have, and go to scripts, go to add component, and then type in air resistance, and you have it right there. So there's two things you'll notice. One is the debug function and the Raycast density. Now we're not going to worry about those right now, but if we hit play, as you can see, the smaller sphere hits the ground a long time before the larger sphere does. Now these are both falling pretty slow, and that's because their mass is only 1. So if we set their mass to something like 50, they're going to fall a lot faster, as you can see there. Now they almost fell at the same rate, and that's because they're both very heavy, so the air resistance has less of an effect. Now, the two properties you see here are debug and Raycast density. So if we select this sphere, actually we'll do the bigger one, we turn on debug. When we hit play, if we go to the scene view in play mode, as you can see there's a bunch of red lines, and that's just debugging the raycasts you have. Now you may want to use this in some cases where you have a fairly complex object and you want to check how things are colliding or something like that. But do keep in mind, it does not measure air resistance based off of the mesh. It measures air resistance based off of the collider. Now the next thing you'll notice is the Raycast density. So actually we'll leave debug on for this. This is how many raycasts you have per square meter. Now that might not make sense. So to put it in simpler terms, it's how accurate the simulation is. Now the higher this number, the slower it'll run, but it'll also be more accurate. So if we turn it all the way up to 5 and we hit play, as you can see there's a lot more red lines, which means there's a lot more raycasts. And it's a much more stable object now. So the last thing is the settings. If you go to air resistance, resources, and air resistance settings, you can change the air density. Now this is how dense the air is. Right now it's set to 1.225. That's not arbitrary, that's actually the air density at sea level, the average air density at sea level, measured in kilograms per cubic meter. Now if we turn this up to something like 10, these objects will fall a lot slower, because the air is much more dense. Now, there are a few limitations. For example, if you set the mass to something extremely small, like 1e-07, which is 0.70 followed by a 1, the objects won't actually fall. They're going to fly away very quickly. Now this is mostly because technically they're lighter than air, and with this example it's so much lighter than air it moves extremely quickly. But if we set it to something like 0.5, it should be fine. And as you can see, there it is. So that's everything you need to know to get started with this tool. If you have any questions or concerns, you can leave a comment on the itch.io page or on this video, and I will address them as soon as I can. But I hope this is useful to you. Thanks for watching.